Leclerc in the 9. I've got him struggling in the race. That might be the worst prediction I will ever make. Welcome to Xander's post-race review. This week I'll be reviewing the Silverstone Grand Prix. I know, I'm a week late. I've been away. Shoot me. Here's my reactions to my predictions, everything that happened during the race, and what this may mean going forwards. Hope you enjoy. If you've made it this far into the video, make sure to like and subscribe. So, if you haven't been living under a rock the past week, you will know Charles Leclerc just took a very impressive victory at the British Grand Prix. It's pretty easy to get for Charles. He won't have too many weekends that go that smoothly on a Sunday, where he didn't really face too much competition. Antonelli was very unlucky to retire, but Leclerc was always that little bit ahead, so it was always Antonelli's to catch up, which he did look like doing in obviously that far superior Mercedes car until it ended up breaking down. But for Charles's side, he kept it clean, which I didn't think he'd be able to do. I thought he'd be tangled up in a bunch of battles and scraps along the field. He was pretty controlled from start to finish. It was a very measured drive. It was the weekend he'd really lacked previously. He had had a lot of issues in other races with putting it all together for one weekend, and he did so this weekend. He stuck it on P2. It was in quali. He was just off pole because Antonelli took that. And he led from lap 1, obviously with the Ferrari smaller turbo helping on the starts, but he led from lap 1, led pretty much start to finish, fairly unchallenged. So a very, very good weekend from Charles Leclerc. And obviously with Antonelli's issues with the front left tyre shield, I believe it was because it came loose, and you got to see the pictures of that on the main Sky feed. It's a weird issue. We haven't really seen it too much before. I don't think we have actually seen it before. But it was just when he ran over the curb out on the outside of Copse. So I don't know the turn number of Copse, but we all know what turn that is. Because it's got a sort of serrated curb on the outside to try and discourage drivers from taking too much speed through there. He just got quite unlucky because a lot of drivers seem to take that line. And he seems to be the only one to come up with major issues from it, like the main failure, which obviously that would cost him a ton of downforce points. It's not really one that can be fixed. Obviously, it will destroy loads of aero on the other side of the car as well. I mean, you have no balance even when they they tried fixing it, didn't they? But it wasn't a typical. It was a very typical F1 fix. It wasn't the high standard you'd expect. It was sort of similar to a couple of years ago when they the DRS flaps, when they got stuck open, they just used electrical tape to keep it shut for the race. Very similar vibes to that, their quick fix and pit stop. But obviously dropped him down to like P10 and his car was sliding everywhere. There's not really too much he could have done. And that's where we sort of get onto his controversial penalty. He got a penalty for violating track limits, which he did do, despite the fact his car would have been unable to be kept on the track. So I can understand why a lot of people and a lot of fans are very outraged by that penalty, all in all, and they're struggling to understand why he's been given it when his car's already disadvantaged. But it's similar to a Sebastian Vettel 2019 in Canada, that it doesn't matter what your car is or what the circumstances leading up to it. If you're going over track limits, they want you to go slower. Even with a damaged car, they want you to go slow so you stay within the limits. It doesn't matter how much damage you have or how slow you're going anyway, or how much that's impacted your race. It is just purely the car, no matter what state it is, what state it is in, should be staying between the white lines or the curve, whatever the track limits are for that race. So that is very unfortunate. Obviously did drop him outside the points in P15. His last 3 races, Antonelli, he's picked up 15 points in main races, and sprint he took sprint win, he took all 8, so he's picked up 23 points in the last 3 races. So his championship lead has gone down dramatically to teammate George Russell, who now looks to be back in the fight, properly back in the fight, as he goes back over Lewis Hamilton, which shouldn't be a surprise. We were all expecting Russell to be in the fight. He had his fair share of bad luck at the start. And now it seems to be Kimi's turn now. We weren't expecting it for Kimi to be quite this dramatic. It has come very quickly, and it's come very, very harsh really for him, because there's been no fault of his own. He's been quicker than George all week, well, pretty much every weekend, bar maybe Austria, you can argue, because we don't know George's true pace of managing. But he has been on the whole quicker, and he's got nothing to show for it. It feels very, very unfair to him that that's been happening, and we can understand why he's feeling quite lost at the moment. But as is F1 in 2026, these things will quickly turn around, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on a streak of 3 wins in a row again and puts his championship lead even further, because he has been showing the pace. There's no reason why he can't be doing that. It is just now his luck is... He's just had no luck, really. The mistakes that have been quite unlucky, but it hasn't been... It's a difficult way to put it, because if you look at it and you think, oh, George Russell's been so lucky with Kimi Antonelli's issues, and you would lean to agree with that. But I wouldn't say that's George Russell's luck. George Russell hasn't had luck with that. He's not personally had luck. Kimi's been unlucky, George has had no luck. Similar to how it was at the start of the season with George's issues, for example, in Canada. It is just 2026 regulations. These batteries and engines, they don't seem, especially the Mercedes one, don't seem to be able to last that long. And in this case for Antonelli, the car just was fragile. George Russell, of course, took home P2 in quite bizarre fashion, really. It was what George has sort of become known for, really, throughout his years in F1, just being super consistent, always being up there, as obviously he benefited from Antonelli's issues, dropping Antonelli out of the points and Russell up to P3. And then the safety car brought out by Max Verstappen's crash, again with the rear wing, similar to Austria issues, but we'll get into Max Verstappen's issues later and what he may be thinking at this moment in time, what he may be looking at doing in his driver move, staying in F1. His crash brought out a safety car, and Ferrari then took the opportunity to box Lewis and Charles. Charles had the delta, and he had the gap. He was 20 odd seconds in the lead. He had pretty much free reign of what he wanted to do. It really would not have affected him. He'd have won the race no matter what, and the safety car confirmed it. Lewis came in, he pits for a new set of tyres to guarantee him to the end of the race, because tyre degradation wasn't as high as we thought it would be, but the tyres were still probably wanting a change for, if you've got 1 lap left, you want to throw everyone at it, you'd want the change of tyres. Mercedes opted to not pit Russell, and safety car stayed out. It was originally called in for 1 last lap of racing, and it was redeployed again for unknown issue. I think it came out as a signal error. I think there was a miscommunication between the FIA and Bert Mailander, the driver of the safety car. I think that was what they said it was, which is why it stayed out for the final lap, which is why it finished under safety car. Controversially, with Lewis missing out again, he can't catch a break with these things. Every time a safety car comes out towards the end of the race, he may as well, whatever his team tell him to do, whatever he wants to do, he should just not do it, because it won't benefit him. He should just do the opposite, and it might work out. But yeah, Russell ended up getting ahead of Lewis for P2. Obviously, that would have left him vulnerable if there was a last lap of racing, because everyone else behind him with fresh tyres. But the safety car stayed out. So Russell takes his maiden podium at his home Grand Prix, which is quite mental. It took him 7 years to finally get a podium at Silverstone. a track he's been very good at if you ignore the crash in 2022 with Zhou at the start. He has been quite good round Silverstone. You can remember back to 2021, that horror of a Williams car. Not the worst Williams car he drove, but it's still not a good one. He dragged that up into Q3 and had his lap of honour almost, as Williams sent him out on a empty track because they knew they weren't going to be able to compete. So he had that lap in qualifying. He could drag that Williams to Q3. He's done exceptionally well round Silverstone his entire career, really. And it's taken him this long to finally get a weekend together. It is quite surprising in a way, considering how consistent he is. You'd have thought he'd have snuck a P3 or just something eventually at Silverstone, but no, he took P2 this weekend, one off where I thought he'd be. I thought he'd win. But it was another weekend he didn't have the pace really to win. He didn't have the pace of Charles or Lewis or Kimi. He was behind all them. He was in a bit of a battle with Verstappen, but I reckon he would have had Verstappen anyway. Verstappen was on older tyres, struggling a bit more. His race was sort of... Red Bull put him on a different strategy. His race was sort of very off-centred to the rest of them. Very, very different. But yeah, George Russell, P2 2026, after not really putting together a good weekend, poor in qualifying. He got P4, I believe it was, but he was way off Antonelli. Much, much further behind than we thought he'd be on a track he's quite good at. And then in the race, he was absolutely nowhere near. Antonelli was streets ahead of him, and so were the two Ferraris. He was stuck in a battle with Max and Oscar. Was it Max? It was Max. Might have been. It was one of the McLarens, but I'm filming this a week after it's happened. My memory's faded. I've been away for a week, so you'll have to forgive me on that behalf. But yeah, he ends up with a very, very favourable position to where he should have been. He should have been nowhere near that podium had it not been for Red Bull's rear wing issues striking Max Verstappen again, which is something we'll get on to now. So Max Verstappen's rear wing doesn't fully close. It's a weird issue, as Isaac Hadjar has not had the same issue, and neither has any of the other drivers. It seems to be just his car. It's happened twice now. So there does have to come up, is it how he's driving the car? Is he just not set up for these regulations? Obviously, he's an unbelievable driver, fantastic driver. But with this sort of Macarena wing, does that just not suit him? Is he a bit too quick? We don't know. Really, Red Bull have an issue. He said he's fed up. He's looking at leaving Red Bull, as you could tell with his disappointment and anger, really, in the post-race interviews. He was not happy to be there at all. You've really got to feel for him. And we could be saying goodbye to one of the all-time greats, four-time world champion. If he's not enjoying it and he doesn't see a future anywhere else with any other team, he's not going to hang around. He's already said before he doesn't expect to be here to the ages like Lewis and Fernando are. He wants to do other racing commitments. He wants to spend time with his family. He's sort of lived the life he's wanted to live, and now because of how much time he has to sacrifice for being an F1 driver, becoming an F1 driver, you can see why he'd want to settle down a bit and see his family more and spend the time on what really, really matters. Oscar Piastri to Red Bull Racing in 2027. Will it happen? Well, obviously, Oscar Piastri's manager is Mark Webber, former Red Bull Racing driver, partnered Sebastian Vettel, almost won a championship himself. If Oscar goes to Red Bull, he will more than likely be the main guy, as Isaac Hadjar is still building up experience in the team, still without his first Red Bull podium. But he's going to be building his way back up there. But obviously Oscar will come in to be the number one driver and separate himself away from Lando, which is not a move I expected to hear. As obviously, if you remember back to 2020, 2021, 2022 even, all the links were Lando to Red Bull. And that still sticks with me better than Oscar to Red Bull. Lando is a much more Red Bull driver in my mind. Someone who is he plays up to the media a bit. As much as people think Max Verstappen is very nonchalant to the media, he does play up to the media. That is his whole persona. The short response he doesn't give is still playing up to the media. He doesn't give the media what he wants. He's very out there in his emotions, is Max. He does say, you can tell how he feels. He can't really hide it. And Lando is the same, but in the opposite way. Lando is very, very emotional. But he comes out with saying it completely. But blames himself more. Max is less of that. Max is more angry with the way things are. Lando's more upset and saddened by the way things are. But still, Lando strikes me more as a Red Bull driver. All the pictures of him in the Red Bull suit back in 2020, 2021, they still look more correct than Oscar in a Red Bull suit. But with Mark Webber being his manager and Oscar apparently seemingly unhappy with McLaren, as what's being reported in the media, it wouldn't be a surprise if Oscar would be the one to go. I'd just be surprised why Red Bull. They seem a bit on a downward trend. They're losing key members of staff, which is an issue. If they're going to lose, they've lost Horner, Marco. I mean, they needed to go really with all the shenanigans and stuff they'd been doing. Horner was a bit more than shenanigans. Surprised how he's almost being able to get back, but if Flavio Briatore's allowed back, sure, why not? We may as well invite Epstein. Which of course leads to Verstappen to McLaren. A Norris-Verstappen partnership would be one of the stronger pairings on the grid. I mean, it would definitely put McLaren... They were probably, well, I'd say Ferrari probably have the best driver pairing on the grid. McLaren I'd put second already, but strengthening that with Verstappen and Norris, it's quite a big step up. It brings them a lot closer to, I think, the Ferrari boys pairing. Still slightly behind. I feel Charles has more in the bag than Lando does. And obviously Lewis speaks for himself. His reputation speaks for himself, much the same as Max Verstappen does. You can't really pick between those two. It would be cool to see Verstappen in a new team. We don't know what he's like in anything other than the Red Bull outfit. So that'd be very interesting to see how he adapts, how he changes that team. Obviously, they're two number one drivers, Norris and Verstappen. And no matter what your opinions are on Norris, he's far too quick to be number two, and he will not be happy playing number two. So I don't think they'd get on. I don't think that partnership would work at all. I think they'd want the car in two different windows, and they wouldn't be able to put two and two together. Throw in the mix Zach Brown managing Max Verstappen. If Jos Verstappen had issues with Horner and Marco, well, mainly Horner, wasn't it? Jos Verstappen's issues were, I think him and Zach Brown are going to get on probably, well, similar to how a Scot will get on with an Englishman when England are playing whoever in an international tournament. They will not be friends. So then the Silverstone top 10. Obviously, you got Leclerc taking the win, taking all the points back to Maranello for the Scarlet Red team. George Russell, P2, we spoke about before. Lewis Hamilton, P3, unlucky in the end. Good battles with Max and Lewis fighting. Always entertaining, obviously, until Max's crash, but Lewis had him anyway. Max's battle was more with George Russell for the final podium place. Fourth, Lando, sort of non-existent this race. Sort of just around there. Isa Kajar, P5, good weekend from him. 10 points, healthy amount of points added onto his total for the championship. You can't really complain too much. It's a good weekend. Liam Lawson, P6. Liam Lawson, P6, the man who's meant to lose his seat, if you're led to believe the reports coming out at the end of the season, will no longer be in Formula 1. P6, having his best ever season. They're not even halfway through the 2026 season. 8 extra points to his name, the one in the sprint. It's a 9-point haul this weekend for the Racing Bulls team. only one less than Isaac Hadjar, who obviously Lawson beat in the sprint, just about taking the final point of the sprint race. Such a good weekend for Liam Lawson. He is firing on all cylinders. It will be an absolute crime to see him out of Formula One at the end of the season. He has to go somewhere. Whether or not it's back at the main team at Red Bull, I doubt it. I don't think that's likely. But I could easily see him at like an Audi or a Williams or somewhere, some other project going on for him to join, because he could easily be a race winner. He's proven it before in other categories. He's very, very fast. It'd be a crime to see him out of the sport. Lindblad, P7, making it a 6-7. Whee, 6-7 for Racing Bulls. I enjoyed their social media post afterwards about it. It's a very RB thing to post about. Very RB to celebrate it, and you just know. You know Lindblad enjoyed that celebration with the 6-7. Lawson probably did. He wasn't being called a good boy for once. He probably really did enjoy it. P8, Bortoletto. I thought he'd have a good weekend in Austria. He didn't. He's had his good weekend now. That's a very, very good result. Audi's highest ever result in Formula One. P8 for Bortoletto. 4 points in the bag. Good race from him, really. Just quick. P9 and 10, the Alpine boys, headed by Colapinto. Any Argentinians out there, if you somehow find this video, you won't. You don't really speak much. Unless you can understand my English and my accent. Why would you watch this? But yeah, Franco Colapinto, proving me wrong. Every single race, pretty much. He's well, not every other. He's quick, he's slow, he's quick, he's slow. That's how he goes. But as long as you're very, very quick on the ones you are, you can smooth that over a season. P9 ahead of Gasly. Just a good result for Colapinto. It's only 2 points, but it's still a useful 2 points. And Gasly, P10, rounding out the point scorers of Silverstone. It's probably not what you wanted. I expected Alpine to be better, to be honest. But it's a point at the end of the day. It is better than nothing. You'll take it. My driver of the day would have to be Liam Lawson. P6 and an RB. Yeah, he's definitely performed this weekend. He's performing every weekend he turns up to at the moment. But he's my driver of the day, Liam Lawson. So, how does that leave the championship heading into round 10, Spa-Francorchamps? I hope you enjoyed that pronunciation, by the way. What a week in France does to you. You become a bit français. Obviously, Kimi Antonelli, P1, 179 points. He's only 25 ahead of George Russell in P2, 154. He's on 147 points. Is Lewis, I believe he's 39 ahead of Charles, who's in P4. Slowly bridging the gap is Charles. George P2, 154. Lewis P3, 147. Charles P4, 108. Good for Charles to finally get back up there over the 100-point mark after a very disappointing start, and he's looking like he's, well, at least this weekend. You can't really judge it off just one weekend, but this weekend was far better put together. I think if he can keep this momentum, he'll do well in Spa, and that gap will continue to close. I think they're two very, very even drivers, so he'll hope to close that. P5, Lando Norris. P6, Oscar Piastri. He's going 2x2. 7, Max Verstappen, no points in the main race this weekend. Missed out on a big haul. 24 points behind him is his teammate Isaac Hadjar, who obviously added a fair bit of points. 10 points that weekend. Not too bad. P9, Pierre Gasly, 42 points. He has all but 18 of Alpine's points. They're on 60 for the total Alpine. He's got 42 of them. Very strong showing from Pierre. Would you expect anything different though? Probably not. And in P10, it is Liam Lawson, only 3 points behind Gasly now on 39. He's got 39, his teammate's got 20. Racing Bulls are only 1 point off Alpine. Very, very easily could be the 5th best team come the end of next weekend in Spa. So you never quite know what may happen in Spa, but if I had to hedge my bets, I'd bet on Racing Bulls overtaking Alpine that weekend. And then for the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes lead the way, just less than 100 points ahead of Ferrari, who are in P2. I think it's like 78 points the difference between them. So it's coming down, obviously, with Kimi's issues and Ferrari just sort of capitalising upon that, getting quite a big haul of points in the past couple Grand Prix, obviously winning 2 out of the last 3. That's definitely helped their case, and a double podium this weekend is exactly what they could have wanted. McLaren a little way behind, 179. Sort of in no man's land. They're not going to catch the Ferraris, but then at the same time, Red Bull on 128. Red Bull won't catch McLaren. McLaren are a bit... Now they've sorted out their reliability issues with not even starting the Grand Prix at the start of the season. Sorted that out, smoothed that out. They're consistently P5, P6. If you're going to bet on where the McLarens will be, you'll bet between P4 and P6. They'll probably both be in that bracket. P5, Alpine, 68 points behind Red Bull. Red Bull's reliability, especially with Max Verstappen's rear wing, really is becoming their kryptonite, and that really will hurt them, especially on a... Spa has 5 straight line mode where you can open the DRS and front wing, 5 active aero zones. That will hurt Verstappen. Don't be surprised if we see him have to lift early to make sure that rear wing's shut. Or you'd hope not, but there could be another big shunt for him coming into Spa, as it is quite a fast circuit. The rear wing will be open loads, having to slam on the brakes. It's not looking good for Red Bull. They've got to sort something out in this week. Obviously, we spoke about Racing Bulls being P6. 38 points behind them is Haas. Just started well, now in no man's land. 10 points behind them, Williams. Again, they didn't even start well. They're just in no man's land. They're just down there with Audi, Haas and Denman. Don't want that. Audi, P9, 6 points. Could be so much more if P11 gave points, but it doesn't. So they'll have to take that on the chin. They'll take this big point haul they've got now as a bonus. They're not into the threat from Aston Martin anymore unless a freak result happens. Aston Martin then P10 with 1 point and Cadillac still with 0. Yet to have a point. You have to feel quite bad for Cadillac because they've not been slower than the Astons. Just that one result can change the championship, and that will change. It's a huge amount of money. 1 place changes. But at least Cadillac may have more aero time. They'll have loads of aero time anyway. With the wind tunnel testing time, that's the one. They'll have loads of that anyway, being down that end of the field, but still be P11. You'd hope they wouldn't be by the end of the season. Aston Martin do deserve to be down there with the dreadful reliability, dreadful power output of that Honda engine, and just the dreadful car that they have built. They do not deserve to not be dead last in this championship. So expect Cadillac to maybe pick up a few points. Maybe not in Spa, but you're looking at like a shock result in a Singapore or a Monza, something where it could be an unpredictable outcome. That's where I expect for the Cadillac boys to step up, and it's likely to be Sergio Perez on the form we have seen. The driver, I think, who will leave Silverstone feeling the most disheartened, probably Oscar Piastri, obviously involved in some incidents at the start of the Grand Prix, really did ruin his race. He finished P11. Just nowhere, really, for him after the collisions. Just nowhere for him to go. He's definitely had probably one of the worst weekends he'll have in a McLaren for a while, probably why he's feeling down and looking to leave. It was just not a good weekend for Oscar Piastri. Similarly, well, Albon didn't really have much pace either, as much as it pains me to say. Just looking through the list here of drivers who were nowhere. Ocon, not too bad, close to Ollie Behrman, still not beating him. Sainz, P12, that's about as good as he can get in that Williams at the moment. If he had points, it'd be a miracle. Perez, P15, last. Not last of the finishers, but sort of last of the drivers without any sort of issues, because he had Antonelli and then Bottas behind Antonelli. Isn't great, considering it's after safety car. Obviously, this result makes them look a bit close together because of the safety car, but for Bottas to still be behind Antonelli even after the 5-second track limit penalty, not great. And obviously, Alonso and Lance Stroll were both lapped, so you can't really do too much about that. Also, though, Carlos Sainz, I believe it was, did have the most unusual of issues. Is that when he went to unlap himself because he thought he was a lap down, but he was actually on the lead lap, he then got hit with a penalty because of he technically won Silverstone. Carlos Sainz won the Silverstone Grand Prix. Yeah, he did. Factually, he crossed the line first on the lead lap. The order should have been Sainz, then Leclerc. But obviously, with a penalty lap, because he obviously unlapped himself when he wasn't actually a lap down. That shouldn't be it. But yeah, just for a clip, Carlos Sainz won the Silverstone Grand Prix in 2026. Wow. What does this mean going forwards in the championship for the drivers and constructors? Ferrari have upgrades coming to Spa. I'm surprised how they keep coming up with so many upgrades, but I expect them to be good. But all that will be coming in the predictions video coming later this week. That's all for now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.